Howdy everyone. So you can see now that I have the cowling completely installed. I did not pin it. I don't think it's necessary to pin it at this point just because I'm still doing some trial fitting. But you can see that it is on the plane and it does fit to the bottom of the fuselage or the bottom cowling just fine. And the only issue is you can see at the very top there's a gap. So that baffle that I'm working on is still a little too tall. So again, I could probably pull this down with the hinges, but why? Why induce that kind of stress into the cowling? So I'm going to take the top cowling off and trim that down some more. But what I'd like to also try to do before, when this was up enough, I could use the marker to trace the cowling profile, cut the baffle, install the baffle, put the cowling on, and I would get the hinges up front and aligned and get the cowling together along the front. So the front would basically be in alignment, and then as the top cowling went back, obviously it would run uphill. But at least I knew that the fore and aft was correct because it was engaged with the hinges. So with this up in the air, I could use a flashlight and look in here and look at the contour between the cowling and the baffle to see if it was close. The only problem was that I wasn't exactly sure where the baffle was in relation to the firewall edge here. Like I said, I had measured roughly with a tape measure, but real world, where does it actually sit? And also, since I'm doing this side baffle, this side of the back baffle, when I had the baffle laying on the cowling, when the cowling was on the bench, I was just kind of guessing where center was. And of course, if you move that left or right, if you move the baffle in relation to the cowling, left, right, or fore, aft, that's going to change the profile that you need to cut. So now that I've got it in, I'm going to go ahead and I used a marker and kind of painted, if you will, some areas on the cowling itself. I'm going to see if I can get some wear indications on that so I know exactly where the baffle sits, fore, aft, left, right. And then I can position it on the bench in that same location and draw one more line, and then I'll cut it. All right, let me get this apart, and I will talk to you guys later. Alrighty, so I have already made another cut on the baffle, but I wanted to show this reference mark that I was talking about. So before I put the cowling back on the airplane, I used a Sharpie marker and did some painting, if you will, in the area where that baffle sits. So the baffle sits here and goes this way. It's the right side baffle. Of course, the cowling is upside down. So then I had the baffle in place, I put the cowling on, and there's a very faint indication right through here of where the actual baffle sits. And you can see where the baffle actually stops. So I know exactly where this corner of the baffle sits. And I can, again, make use of my reference marks because these are evenly spaced from this firewall edge inboard into the cowling. So I can take the baffle, I can line up this corner of the baffle here with that mark that was left when I had it actually installed on the airplane. And then I can use my reference marks on the other side and keep the baffle evenly spaced from the individual reference marks all the way down. And then I could use the marker and draw my line, which I've already done and I've already cut it. But let me get this, I'm trying to do this one-handed. Let me get this back into position here. So that's roughly in position there. So now you can see the contour between the baffle and the cowling. Of course, there's a lot of reflection, but there is virtually no space. There is no gap between the baffle and the cowling. So I've got the shape correct. The shape of the baffle is correct. Again, I know the location is correct because I've got this corner indication right here. That's real time with the baffle in place and the cowling in place. And then, like I said, I had already had the cowling, or the baffle was installed with the cowling off. I was able to measure from the edge of the firewall to the baffle, and that gave me this distance. Reference lines at that distance, my real world indication here, and then I can space the baffle equally according to these in this orientation, front to back. So if I line up that corner, and then I can see the distance at that corner between the baffle itself and the cowling, the little marks that I had made along the cowling. And I'll just place the baffle roughly even with those all the way across. And then draw my line and make my cut, and this is what you end up with. Got a nice tight contour that matches the cowling. That's all fine and dandy on the bench, right? The real test is when you have it on the airplane. You've got the baffles screwed in place, you got the cowling pinned in place. How do you know that that contour is still correct? Well, like I said, my plan is I just want to work these baffle pieces one section at a time, put them in, put the cowling on, and if I can get the cowling on without interference and get it pinned without interference, I know that that particular baffle panel, at least clearing the cowling, is good. I don't know that the distance is correct. By that I mean the instructions say that between the cowling and the baffle you need at least a 3/8 gap. I don't know if I'm going to have a 3/8 gap, 1/4 inch gap, no gap. I don't know. I don't care at this point. I just want to get the baffle shaped enough so I can get the cowling on. I'm going to put that baffle back on. That baffle panel is going to go on. I can almost guarantee that the cowling will just sit like it should. That tells me that that panel is at least not interfering with anything. I'll leave it in place. I'll move on to this panel. I'll do the exact same thing. I'll just keep marking it and chipping away at it until I get the cowling to sit down all the way. At that point, I know that both of those panels are good. I'll leave those in place, move on to the side panels. At some point, I'm going to have to figure out how to adjust the spacing between all of the baffles and the top of the cowling. And I think I might try that paperclip deal, but I'm not there yet. So onward. Talk to you guys later. Howdy, everyone. All right, I'm back in the shop doing some more work on the baffles and the cowling. Not actual cowling work, but just fitting the baffles to the engine and making sure that the top cowling will fit. So the piece that I had been working on, I was working on the aft right-hand side of the engine baffle. That one is now cut. I have it installed, and you can see that I've got the cowlings in place. One thing to make note, nothing is pinned. That's not true. The bottom cowling is pinned along the firewall on both sides, and it is clecoed along the bottom. Is it clecoed, or did I put screws in there? Nope, just clecoed. So the bottom cowling is hinged, pinned, and clecoed along the bottom. The top cowling is just sitting on top. No hinge pins, no nothing. It's just laying on there. So I was able to verify that the top cowling does sit the way it's supposed to. It's not riding up on top of the baffle. And you can also look through your oil door. You can open up the door, shine a flashlight in there, and you can see exactly what the gap is between this side of the rear baffle and the cowling itself. The more that I think about it, the more I think I will. Once I get all of the baffling done, I think I'll do the paper clip thing and put the top cowling on and pin it, and then take the cowling off and see how those paper clips look. And I may tweak the tops of the baffles at that point. But for now, there's, I'm guessing, I'm just going to guess. I can't really see in there at the moment without a flashlight, but I think I've got, the instructions call out, I think it's 3/8 to a 1/2 inch distance on the baffles. I've got probably about that 3/8 setting right now. So for now, that side baffle is done. I'm going to start working on the left side rear baffle, and I'll start getting that fitted to the engine and making sure that, once again, this cowling will sit the way it's supposed to without interference. And like I said, I'm just going to keep doing that a single piece at a time. I'm going to work my way around until I get all the baffles in place and the top cowling sits without any interference. All right, so I'll get cranking on that, and I'll talk to you guys later.